Welcome to Neo and Jiho Part 14. Remember to subscribe and tap the notification bell not to miss any part. The emotional reunion had slowly quieted, leaving behind soft sniffles and long, grateful breaths. Tumi, though still shaken, sat beside Neo on the edge of the velvet couch, their hands tightly clasped, as if neither wanted to let go just yet. Officer Mugapi stood near the entrance, his posture still alert, but his expression was far more relaxed than before. The tension had dissolved in the room, replaced with a quiet reverence. Neo looked up at him, then at her sister, and smiled. "Please sit down," Neo said gently. "You've done so much for us. You deserve more than just a thank you." The officer nodded once and moved to sit across from them, his badge still clipped to his belt. His eyes scanned the room once again, taking in the soft lighting, the polished surfaces, and the quiet grace that filled the space. Kang Jiho, who had been standing quietly nearby, caught Neo's eye and gave her a soft smile before turning and stepping out onto the balcony. He pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed. As the glass doors slid shut behind him, his voice became faint, just a murmur blending with the breeze. Neo watched him for a moment, her heart filled with so many things at once: gratitude, admiration, a deep, warm calm. Then she turned her attention back to the man who had helped make this day possible. Tumi sat back, her fingers brushing away the remnants of tears from her cheeks. "We don't know how to thank you," she said softly, her voice still raw with emotion. Neo reached down beside her and pulled out a slim white envelope from her handbag. Her hands hesitated. She glanced at Tumi, who gave her a nod of encouragement. With a breath, Neo extended the envelope across the glass coffee table. "This is just a small thank you," she said quietly. "From us." Officer Mugapi looked down at the envelope, slightly puzzled. He picked it up, opened it slowly, and saw the sleek black and silver card inside. His brows lifted slightly. "What is this?" "A card Jiho gave me," Neo explained, her voice catching a little. "He said, in case there was someone who deserved something more than just words. I don't even know how much is on it, to be honest. I was too shy to ask." Tumi leaned in, grinning. "Honestly, I told her it might have enough to buy a cow or a whole ranch. With Jiho, you never know." Neo laughed, swatting Tumi lightly on the arm. Officer Mugapi chuckled as well, his eyes gleaming. "Well," he said, tucking the card back into the envelope with care, "I think I'll be making a little stop at the bank tomorrow morning, just in case your ranch theory is right." They all laughed again, the room now echoing with something lighter, something whole. For a moment it felt like family, the kind built not just through blood, but through kindness, effort, and shared pain. Officer Mugapi stood, brushing down his shirt. "You two are strong," he said, looking at them both. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if you ever need anything again, anything at all, you call me. Day or night, I'll come running." Neo rose and hugged him without hesitation. Tumi followed, her embrace tight, her cheek resting on the officer's shoulder for a brief second longer than expected. There were tears in her eyes again, but they were different now, grateful, humbled. As he made his way toward the door, Kang Jiho returned from the balcony. His call had ended, and his face was peaceful, content. The two men paused as they crossed paths. Jiho offered his hand. "Thank you," he said in his warm, steady tone, "for what you did, for Tumi, for Neo." Officer Mugapi shook his hand firmly. "I was glad to help. You have a strong woman beside you. And her sister. Well, she's been through more than most." Jiho nodded. "She told me." They stood in silence for a second, then Jiho tilted his head curiously. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you have a family?" Jiho asked gently. The officer's face lit up with quiet pride. "I do. One son. He's 30 now, Works as a doctor. Just finished his master's a few months ago. He's in another hospital not far from here. Jiho's eyes warmed with admiration. You must be proud. I am, Mugapi said, voice thick with pride. He worked hard. Everything we couldn't afford, he earned. There was a pause, and Jiho reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a second envelope smaller than the one before. He placed it into the officer's hand. What's this? Mugapi asked, a little surprised. Consider it a little more than a thank you. That card is access to a private grant I set up through my company. You can use it for anything. Buy a home, invest, retire early, whatever you choose. And if your son is ever interested in a post in Korea, I can make sure a spot opens for him. Officer Mugapi stared at the envelope for a long time. Then he looked up, eyes shining. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Jiho interrupted gently. What you did, it wasn't part of your duty, but you followed your instinct. You protected someone you didn't owe anything to. That matters, to me. There was silence. Then the older man's hand closed tightly around the envelope. He stepped back, nodded once. Then I will honor this the best way I can. They shook hands again, this time slower, more meaningful, and then Officer Mugapi turned toward the door. Before stepping out, he glanced back at the room. Neo and Tumi stood side by side, still holding hands, their eyes on him. Jiho stood slightly behind them, his arm resting casually on the side of a chair. This, Mugapi said softly, gesturing to all of it, is what I wish for every person I meet. Peace, family, and good people. Then he opened the door and disappeared into the quiet hallway. The suite grew still again. Neo let out a long breath, then turned and wrapped her arms around Tumi. We're home, she whispered. Tumi clutched her tightly. Jiho, standing to the side, watched them quietly, his heart full. Later that night, as the stars began to show over the Gaborone sky, a new kind of silence settled over them. Not the silence of fear or waiting, but of peace, of healing. Tumi had retired to her room, the one just across the hallway. She closed the door behind her, then sat on the edge of the wide bed. For a long moment, she simply stared at the smooth cotton bedding. It had been cold concrete just the day before. A sigh left her lip. Then she reached for the phone. It came to life with a soft buzz, lighting up with a dozen missed calls and messages. Tumi scrolled through, some from concerned friends, some from university classmates. Her fingers hovered over the call button. She finally picked one number. Hello? Came a surprised voice on the other end. It's me, Tumi, she said gently. There was a pause, then an excited squeal. Oh my God, Tumi! Are you okay? Where are you? We heard things. We prayed for you. Tumi smiled, tears building again. I'm out. Everything is okay now. I can't talk much, but I'm safe. I'll explain soon. Thank you for worrying about me. After ending the call, she placed the phone gently down and turned to the floor. Kneeling beside the bed, her shoulders dropped in relief as she whispered a heartfelt prayer. Thank you, God. Thank you for saving me. For Officer Mugapi, for Neo, for Jiho, for the doctor, for every hand you sent to protect me. I know I don't deserve this mercy, but I receive it. I will do better. Thank you for giving me another chance. She wept quietly in gratitude, rocking gently, not from sorrow but from overwhelming peace. Across the hallway, Neo stood in front of the mirror, slowly brushing her hair, her eyes still red from earlier tears, but her smile was softer now, calmer. Jiho appeared from the balcony door, drying his hands with a towel. She's okay? Neo turned and nodded. Yes, she's on the phone with her friends. I think she's finally letting herself breathe. Jiho stepped closer, then gently tucked a loose strand behind her ear. And you? Neo leaned into his chest with a tired sigh. I feel like I'm in a dream. They stood like that for a while, wrapped in stillness. Do you want Tumi to come back with us to Korea? Neo paused, buttoning her top, her hands stilled. I've thought about it, but I didn't know how to bring it up to you. Jiho walked closer, placed a hand on her back. You don't have to be afraid to ask me anything. I love you. If she being with us gives you peace, then it gives me peace too. Neo blinked back emotion, her voice hushed. Really? Really, we can begin her visa process immediately, whatever she needs. She turned and hugged him tightly. Thank you, Jiho. Thank you. That night, when the soft lights dimmed and the city outside the windows slipped into quiet, Jiho turned to Neo as she folded a throw over the armchair. He watched her for a moment, his eyes trailing the curve of her shoulder, the delicate line of her jaw, the way her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her hair. Neo, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. She turned slowly, their eyes meeting. Something unspoken passed between them. Her lips parted as if to speak, but the words didn't come. Jiho stepped closer, his hand brushing hers lightly. She didn't pull away. I've never seen you this quiet, he murmured with a smile. I don't know what to say, she replied, barely louder than the rustle of the curtains. He reached up and gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered just a moment longer than necessary. Neo looked down shyly, the flush in her cheeks rising. Jiho moved closer. He tilted her chin up slowly, delicately, until her eyes met his again. Their lips met softly, like a question answered without words. Jiho's hands slid to her waist, drawing her close, and Neo rested her hands against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. He was warm, steady, gentle. His embrace felt like coming home. One step led to the other, slowly, not with urgency, but reverence. Each touch was an act of discovery. Jiho kissed her shoulders, the side of her neck, whispered her name like it was sacred. She ran her fingers along his back, memorizing the strength in his frame and the way his breath caught when her lips brushed his collarbone. When they finally laid down together, wrapped in each other's arms, skin to skin beneath the sheets, the world felt far away. Jiho looked down at her, one hand resting softly against her cheek. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, he whispered. Neo smiled, eyes glistening, and whispered back, I feel safe. The night stretched long and slow, full of murmurs, laughter, quiet sighs, and tender silence. They did not rush it. They simply held on to each other as if they were afraid morning might take this feeling away. And when they finally drifted to sleep, Jiho's arm was around her waist, her head resting on his chest, their legs tangled, breathing in rhythm. It was not just a night. It was the beginning of forever. The first soft light of dawn slipped quietly through the sheer curtains, painting pale gold across the cream walls of the suite. Outside, the city of Gaborone stirred in stillness, unaware of the sacredness that had unfolded behind those doors the night before. Jiho stirred first, his body still warm from sleep. But the moment his eyes opened, they found her. Neo lay beside him, her head resting just below his shoulder. One arm draped softly across his chest. Her fingers curled against his skin as though she had held him all night. Her breathing was calm now, peaceful, but there were traces of quiet wonder still laced in her features. He didn't move. He didn't want to disturb the moment. He just looked at her. Her hair spilled softly around her face, her lashes resting gently against her cheeks. Her skin glowed with that tender stillness of love unspoken but deeply understood. He brushed his fingers across her back, slowly, memorizing the softness of her, the curve of her waist, the heat of her breath against his skin. Jiho couldn't explain what had changed inside him, but something had. Something big, irreversible. He didn't just feel like a man in love, he felt like a man who had arrived, in the deepest sense of the word. And it had happened here, in Africa, in the arms of a woman who had taught him more about himself in one night than the world had in years. Neo stirred gently, her lashes fluttering open. Their eyes met. For a second there was just stillness. Then she smiled, small, sleepy, shy. Good morning, she whispered. Jiho leaned in and kissed her softly on the forehead. Good morning, my heart. Neo's breath caught in her throat. She tucked her face into his neck, hiding from the emotion, and he chuckled gently, brushing her arm with slow strokes. I don't even know what to say, she whispered. Last night felt like a dream. It was better than a dream, he replied, turning slightly so he could look at her fully. Neo covered her mouth gently with her hand, overcome. Then she leaned in and placed a kiss just below his chin. Jiho, I mean it, he said, touching her cheek. I will frame this moment in my mind. You, here, with me, in Africa. It's the most beautiful thing that has ever happened to me. Neo looked away, flustered, but he gently turned her face back with a single finger under her chin. Hey, he said, you don't need to hide from what we are. You don't need to be shy around me. I saw you. I loved you. I still do. She giggled, then quickly covered her face again. Stop talking like that. I feel like my heart is going to jump out of my chest. He laughed and kissed her again. You think your heart is loud? Mine hasn't stopped beating like a drum since last night. They both laughed, quietly, fully. Jiho shifted beneath the sheets, the memory of her touch still dancing along his skin. His body, even now, responded to her nearness. But he didn't rush. This wasn't about desire anymore. It was about the overwhelming fullness of love that had anchored itself in their hearts. After a few more lingering moments, Jiho sat up. Come, he said, reaching for her hand. Let's shower. She hesitated, then slipped her fingers into his. He led her into the ensuite bathroom where the soft sound of water filled the room. As steam curled around the ceiling, they stood beneath the cascade together. It wasn't about passion now. It was about closeness. They helped each other wash, giggling when water splashed into eyes, smiling as fingertips brushed shoulders and backs. Neo's hands traced the lines of Jiho's lean frame, broad shoulders, strong chest, a warmth that settled in her belly. Jiho marveled at the softness of her skin, the way she moved with grace, even in vulnerability. After the shower, they dried off and dressed slowly.